Hey, what's up? It's Joe. Welcome to my 5 Minute Friday for May 31st. So, just getting off the Memorial Day weekend, which was last weekend. Then on Tuesday, I went to go visit one of my best friends and big brother, Bill Inman. So we got to talking. We always, I go to his house. We just talk for hours. It's pretty awesome. But Bill's full of a lot of stories. He's been in the field for a long, long time. I think he started programming back in the early 1960s. So he was around from the very beginning. And he was lamenting that a lot of the modern practitioners don't know the history of computing and data, right? So he mentioned a few people like Gene Amdahl and Ed Jordan, both of whom had very significant impacts on the field of computing. And nobody knows who these people are, right? And I told Bill, look, I talked to some data practitioners today, and they don't know who you are either. They barely know who even Ralph Kimball are, right? And so, in other fields like medicine, people are, they're revered. But you get into data and computing, and you're lucky if people remember who you are 10, 20 years after you did whatever you did, and that's how it is. I remember Bill told me once, kind of it's kind of a weird thing, but he's like, just, at some point people are going to forget about you. So you always got to be on to the next thing. So it's good advice, but I feel like history is one of these things where as a craftsperson, and a professional, it definitely helps you to understand the history of the field of computing and of data, right? There's a lot of approaches, a lot of techniques, and a lot of technologies that come out of, I guess, various periods. And they all came out for a reason, right? Somebody found a problem and figured out a solution to it. And so that's really, I think important for people to understand. You can put these approaches and techniques and technologies in the proper context if you understand the history of things, right? Like, why did the data warehouse come about? Well, it was before the data warehouse, people were querying OLTP transactional databases for their analytics. And these were very frail mainframes at the time. And you can imagine what happens when you put a long-running analytical query on a mainframe computer that if you so much as breathe on the thing, it'll probably keel over. It wasn't good, right? So, the idea of the data warehouse came about to offload the pressure on transactional databases. And, then, ETL, well, that came about because you had to get that data out of the operational system and put it into a data warehouse. And then the idea of data marts, right? That's part of the data warehouse, at least as Inman described it. And then Kimball comes along later, comes up with the dimensional modeling, which is, some could argue that's a way to model data in a data warehouse. Bill would tell you that's a way to model data in a data mart. But you need to know what these things are. What's a data mart? What is a data warehouse, according to Bill's definition, right? If you don't know the history of these things, I think it's kind of easy to get bamboozled, especially by vendors that want to pitch you stuff, or bamboozled by bad practices, right? So, modern vendors, for example, modern data vendors, at least the modern data stack vendors, are pitching one big table as the cure-all for all your data woes. Just throw it all into one big table, and that, because, quote, joins are bad. I've never heard such ridiculous stuff in my life, but that's stuff that's being thrown at people right now. If you understand the history of one big table, for example, that's the result of basically, that came out of, well, there's actually really early examples of this back in the 80s and 90s of people I've talked to, we're doing, like, I think one person mentioned they had a table of like 35,000 columns, and they're doing correlative analysis on those columns and trying to figure out operational risk and stuff. And that's just one example, right? But they had a use case and they did it. But one big table in technology companies like that came about because, these big tech companies like Google, Yahoo, Amazon at the time couldn't scale their relational databases for their workloads, operating at web scale. So they had to come up with new databases. And in the case of Amazon, it's DynamoDB. For analytics, in the case of Google, that was Dremel, and which later became BigQuery. But that's a solution where you're using one big table precisely because your data sets are so big that joining them will take way too much time, right? But then you talk to companies that have data sets in the gigs and terabytes, and they kind of wonder, oh gosh, why is this one big table like indecipherable and starts performing pretty badly after a bit? for a variety of reasons, and it's because you're crossing the streams. You're using your one big table as a giant data swamp, right? Because you're avoiding joins. Joins exist for a reason. They joins and tables help separate concerns, and you join the data together. That's kind of how it's been working for decades, right? So no one says reinventing the wheel on that. But anyway, I get off my soapbox on that. But then there's other things too, like history, right? Everyone mentions the supposed Bill Inman and Ralph Kimball wars, which were never a thing. Bill told me flat out, it's like him and Ralph were friends. There was never a beef with these guys ever. So. But then it forces people into these weird decisions, like, oh, well, do I choose the Inman or Kimball, or what approach do I choose for data warehousing? And so that's sorry, that's my kid in the background jumping over stuff. But yeah, so I mean, so if you don't know the history, it forces you into making sometimes just really stupid decisions, right? And so I think you understand history, you can put things in the proper context of why it was useful for that given situation. Why was it invented in the first place? When would you want to use it? When would you not? I've been writing about this in my data modeling book. This is the next chapter coming out, is a brief history of data modeling, looking at so the rise and fall of data modeling, right? So it's a very fun chapter to write. There's a lot of nuance to it. We're also talking about things like machine learning, analytics, and operational systems all sort of in one go, because like all these things feed on each other, right? And although they seem like parallel universes, everything's interconnected. So you got to know the history. You got to know the history in order to know which way things are going to go. So nothing in our field is really done in a vacuum. It all feeds off of other innovations and approaches. So, to know the techniques, you need to understand the context in which they were derived and born. So anyway, so it's good talking to Bill about history. We're actually going to be working on a series of recordings over the summer about the history of computing and data. This is sort of you can kind of get a preview of this on the podcast I did with Bill Inman back. I don't remember what it was, several months ago. When I sat in his house for a couple hours, we just talked about sort of the history of data and computing. But I also felt like we only got to probably 2 to maybe 5% of what was in Bill's brain at the time. He has so many stories, so much context. I mean, he's been programming since 1960, the early 60s. So, I mean, he's been there since the beginning, right? So to get these stories recorded and out in the world, I think is going to be a huge service for the broader community. There aren't that many Bill Inmans left in the world, and Bill's not getting any younger. So it's be good to get these stories out, and hopefully you'll enjoy them when they're out. But anyway, so things coming up. I'm going to be around Snowflake Summit next week. Ethan Aaron's party, the Mother Duck party, doing some stuff with Matillion, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. What else is going on? And then on June 17th, my bestie Sol Rashidi and I were going to be doing a course on Maven, basically from practitioner to executive, which will help you kind of get out of your rut if you're in a kind of feel stuck in your career, and hopefully give you a roadmap to achieving your dreams of moving up the corporate ladder, or just leveling up in your career, right? So I think it'll be a fun course. Sol's got a wealth of experience, 4-time C-level exec at Fortune 100 companies, and just a ton of experience in data in general, and just a very well-spoken and charismatic leader. So this will be a really fun course to do. And after that, just going to be working on the book and knocking out this course for my upcoming Coursera class, which you'll learn more about soon. So anyway, these 5-minute rants, they swear they go over to almost 10 minutes now, so I'll shut up and let you get on with your weekend. So anyway, have a good day and have a good weekend. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.